slept here for days. I felt your heartbeat, felt your mouth breathe, but it's not real. We were close to see the sun, but clouds got in our way, and
Good morning, everyone. It's 12 o'clock on Friday. Happy Friday. Hope you're having a great day. Had a good week. Welcome to the Dan Assel podcast live. I've got a special guest, so I'm going to introduce in a second. That's not my house behind me, and I'm not Elton John's mansion either in Florida. It is a new Zoom background that I'm trying, and I can't play the piano. Just want to thank my community patrons, as always, for supporting my broadcast. Smart Digital, who joined this week. We have Hive Group, Tarsus Group, 19 Events, Easy Fares, and CISO. And just a nod to the fact that at 4 o'clock today, I go live to Canada with Paul St-Amour. And he is the VP of Latin America Tarsus, going to be talking about recent acquisition of Tendero Expo and just generally events in that region in Mexico. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my guest, and here he is, Paul Jeffries.
Hello. Good morning, Dan. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me on today.
No problem. Happy Friday. Paul, you are from Bugle and Communications, but also we're going to chat more about your new business, a new venture, Revuzny, which I can never pronounce. And you're going to tell me in a minute how that word came around.
I will.
Before we get into that, what I'd like to do, and it'd be really useful just to put this into context, can you explain a bit about your 25 years of Bugle and what you've been up to, and sort of bring that to life? That'd be great.
Absolutely. So Bugle, in various shapes and forms, has been around since the mid-90s. We started when there was a sort of explosion in what they then called field marketing, which then became brand experience. And we started by doing some very simple stuff that people were doing, sampling. And then we started to get into creating events for brands and then taking those events to kind of stakeholders that you've spoken to earlier in the week, such as the guy from the East of England Showground, or going to putting in brand activity at the Ideal Home Show. And we built the business right through the 2000s and to about 2008, where we then started looking at other events that we could not only take brands to, but they could own as well. So we started to create one or two brands that they could own, just to give them what we were calling at the time standout ability, because there was a huge promulgation of events that you could go to, but people, unless you were the biggest stand on the block,
sure,
we started to see it was very difficult to get the level of engagement that brands and marketeers wanted.
Standout ability. Sorry, did you trademark that name? That's an interesting.
Did I what?
You should have trademarked it.
No, I borrowed it from. There was a football pundit that used to use the phrase bounce back ability.
Yes.
Exactly. And so I kind of borrowed it, adapted it for our sort of our sort of company that we would always do stuff that created great standouts. So we were also responsible for some of the most infamous Paddy Power stunts. So you could call that an event, such as the really infamous Paddy Wood sign at the Cheltenham Festival. So we were involved in stunt events, more traditional trade shows, consumer events, and also corporate events, taking people to various parts of the world. Sure. And that was a great business. And we had some great clients. We worked with some of the big tech companies, worked with HP and Logitech and Sonos. We were working with Paddy Power, a whole range of businesses.
Across the world, or specifically?
No, mainly UK, but some into Europe as well. We were working with Activision on Guitar Hero, and we were also working at some of the big festivals. So there was a mixture of things but obviously we were acting on behalf of brands most of the time. And what's been interesting listening to your podcast over the last few weeks is the guests you've had on are the exhibition providers or the event providers. who obviously have had a downturn, but the knock-on effect of those organisations like Tarsus and Hive not being able to put on event is that we've had less requirement from our clients because they haven't been able to go to those.
Well, you're part of the supply chain, right? So
Well, we're certainly part of what feeds their business, because we
Sure.
pay them for the space they provide,
Yeah.
obviously. So where we've seen obviously a lot of clients now thinking, well, let's go into a digital environment, that's not something that we were able to do
No.
from a resource point of view. And also, there's enough people doing that who know what they're doing, who are way ahead of us. So
Yeah.
there was no point us trying to suddenly create virtual events, because
Yeah.
it's not what we do, because we always go to other people's events.
Yeah,
So
so
that's the kind of history of Bugle in terms of where we got to in. And actually, we were at the Cheltenham Festival that was much derided in March of last year, when the government decided that all of that had to come to a stop.
Sure. So it's interesting because, as you say, I've had a lot of chats with people in the exhibition world, and myself personally, being a show organizer,
Yeah.
if I'm honest, I never had an appreciation for the whole ecosystem and all these other suppliers and freelancers and companies like yourself. And even though it's been an incredibly negative situation, for me, the positive that's come out of it is that hopefully now, definitely from my perspective, the appreciation and the recognition of what goes into an event, whether it's a live event, something like the Notting Hill Carnival that I know you worked on,
That's right.
trade show, people I think now have understood, right, everything that goes into it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying obviously they didn't realize you just turn up and it's done, but you get the point that people now realize it's a whole sort of ecosystem surrounding it. So like many others, obviously the pandemic came along after Cheltenham and obviously affected your business dramatically. So the last 12 months has been littered with people like yourselves that were thinking, right, what am I going to do? Am I just going to wait it out?
So we started with that.
Yeah, tell us your thinking.
So if we recall the government saying, we had a very traditionally bullish Prime Minister saying it's 10 to 12 weeks. So we thought, well, we're in mid-March. We're not going to really be busy till the summer anyway, because some of the events we work on. So we work on events around golf. You mentioned we were involved with the Notting Hill Carnival, event management and security of, and we didn't really think that those would be affected. We thought, but once we started getting into sort of April, it was pretty clear that riding it out wasn't going to be an option, because there was an indefiniteness, if you like, about when any of these indoor. There was talk about when indoor can start, when outdoor can start, but nobody put a line in the sand, and so we had to then think about two things. One, what are we doing with our cost base? Because like a lot of businesses, we weren't really eligible for much government support because of the way that we're structured, and we didn't pay business rates because we're in a co-share as an office and there's no funding there. And so we started to examine two things. One, what are our costs? And two, what can we do around thinking about the future, because there's such uncertainty about when we could go back. So when we looked at the costs, one of the things that really jumped out at us was our insurance costs, and how much we still had to pay every month for some of which is, you have to legally have, with no income coming in. And when that starts to rack up every month, you start to think, well, shall I stop it, or what can I do about it? From there, after doing a little bit of research, we found out that we were not only the only SME who had this problem. In fact, the research shows that whereas 50% of major corporations pay their insurance in one go at the beginning of the year, the smaller the organization, the more likely they are to pay monthly.
Yeah. And sorry, when you say insurance, can you just bring to life what types without going?
So we're talking about the traditional business insurances, such as your public liability or employer's liability. For a lot of people, they'll have, in the event industry, they'll have a vehicle insurance for their rigs and trailers. They'll probably have some storage insurance.
Cancellation insurance, or
not for us, but more about, we've got all this infrastructure in the warehouse and all these vehicles and rigs that we use every year. They're not earning us any money. What are we going to do with them? And continuing to insure them. And then there's other things such as the professional services insurance, your your professional indemnity insurances, your director and officers insurance, and that's a lot of insurances. And even for a small company like ours, it's a lot of money. So it occurred to us that we weren't going to be the only people in that boat. And I suppose you just have that moment when you think, I want to do something about this. So I hatched this plan with a guy who I've worked with for years about, let's start our own insurance organization where we could help other people in the same boat by providing insurance that you don't have to pay for right now. There was a lot of talk about insurance at the time, early summer, about the FCA and the business interruption and the pandemic insurance. But actually, there was also a lot of people who couldn't get a holiday on their insurance. You could probably get a holiday on your mortgage. You could get a holiday on a few things, but the insurance companies weren't really that open to it. And if anything, what they would do, like the other people, they just tack it on the end. So you're paying for it anyway. So we challenged ourselves to build an insurance business as quickly as we could. And when people said that's going to take you 2 years, we actually did it in about 6 weeks.
Wow.
So we got in contact.
When you're motivated in life by need,
Well, I think it was what I realized after many, many years of being quite blinkered about project profit. Actually, there is a greater good that we should think about.
Yeah.
And I think what the pandemic has done is made us all think a little bit about people around us and our collective responsibility in society. Because once businesses start to fail, people lose their jobs. People who lose their jobs then start losing their homes, which it turns into them breaking up their families. And where does that end up? We end up in a greater mess than we already are, where more and more people are reliant on the government for help, and that's going to at some stage stop. So we have a purpose now, which is to, and it's a bit of a cliche, but to create innovative insurance products that have a purpose. So
Sure.
the purpose here is to keep businesses alive. So our premise is that for the first time ever, you can buy a 15-month insurance policy for your business, but you don't start paying for it until month 4. So those 3 months are completely payment free. And then after month 4, you just pay by installments. And again, once we started to research that, we found that some insurance brokers, providers, whatever you want to call them, were charging people 25% interest on their monthly installments,
Wow.
which really was a red rag to a bull. And so we again have offered the business community no interest payments. So we're saying you don't pay anything for the first 90 days, and we're not going to charge you any interest, because we want to be part of the solution that keeps as many SMEs, especially those who haven't seen the sort of government support like the big organizations have had. We want to keep people alive and trading for the good of us all.
Sure.
And so we kind of kicked off sort of early May with that.
Paul, it'd be useful just in general, because again, there's lots of people that have started new ventures, including myself. How do you just moving away from the actual product for a second, how do you wake up one day, your business has been decimated, that you've been built for 25 years, right?
Yeah.
How do you wake up and get the motivation to do this sort of thing, and then the drive to enter into a completely different area? It'd be useful for people who are thinking about doing something new at the moment.
Okay.
What's your advice?
So I think when you've been decimated, you are naturally quite forlorn and feeling a bit of a victim, and you have to find a way through that very quickly. And because you have a responsibility to your family, to everyone around you, not to do that. And there's been a lot of talk about mental health, especially of men of our age.
Sure.
And when you look at some of the statistics on suicide, it's a really scary time. And again, there's very little support for men of our age in that area, though a lot of people talk about it.
Are you saying
we're the same
age? Are you saying we're the same age?
I'm assuming we might be close, just by our hairlines.
Sorry, God.
Yeah, I had a full hair of hair about 6 months ago. So for me, I've always been one of these people, and people have worked with me over the years. When somebody says to me, I'm a bit like an adolescent child, when people say you'll never be able to do that, that's to me that says, well, just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean we can't do it. And so I was motivated to prove a point for a lot of people, especially in the city, insurance is still quite a small club. to
Yeah.
say, well, yes, it can be done. So it was a matter of finding an equally forward-thinking organisation who actually believed it. But in terms of energy levels,
Mm,
it's about achieving what people say you're not going to be able to achieve.
sure. Because
And
from an outsider in, when we talk about insurance and I don't know,
Mm.
financial products generally,
Yeah.
I would thought you'd have to jump through hoops with regulators, and maybe
So-
show history in this area. How
Um,
did you go about doing that?
So the way you do it is you build a team of people who know those areas. So
Okay.
I'm the kind of the front of the business, the brand, the proposition, talking to people like yourselves. But behind me is a small team of people who have come together, who understand how the IT of that needs to work, how the compliance and the FCA regulations have to work. And so you build a team of people, like in any business, who understand the functions that you need to bring it all together. So that was just a network job where I spoke to this person who said, you know, that person, before I knew where I was, we had a team of people who came together to do this.
So that's again, when I do these things, I like to try and get some takeaways for the audience. I think that's a really good lesson, right? That
Absolutely. If you try and do it all yourself,
yeah,
you're never going to do it. You cannot be a one-man band, and there's no benefit in being a one-man band. Bringing people who know what they're doing and hook them all together.
Yeah.
And there's been a real comfort in working together, even if it has been mainly remotely, as a team of people, being on that weekly call or that daily call.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never really worked in such a structured industry, but it's a new discipline that I've learned. My patience has run a bit thin occasionally, but it's all part of
bureaucracy and stuff like that.
Just some of the things you can and can't say. You know,
Right.
There's a very tight regulation on what you can say about insurance and what you can't, and that's for the customer's good, and you have to respect that. But it takes a bit of learning, and so I've kind of had to retrain my mind in terms of making sure that I adhere to all the processes.
So, insurance, it's not a sexy topic, right? As a consumer, never mind a business insurance. There's a lot of apathy, and the insurance companies trade on that, a bit like a gym membership. You know, 80% of the gym members don't go. Great, they're still paying monthly. I've had the same bank account since I was 16 with NatWest.
Yeah, you know, you probably have the same mobile phone network provider.
Yeah, possibly. I've changed a few more on that, but how do you go about convincing companies to look at this sort of stuff?
So we're working with a lot of professional organisations and trade bodies to tell their members about stop and think about insurance. And I always use the analogy of the trip to the dentist. So most people, or a lot of people, only go to the dentist when they've got a toothache. By which time the dentist will say, "Oh, you've left this a bit long, and therefore it's got to come out. It's going to be painful." So we're saying to people, instead of waiting till the renewal notice comes through, you know, a week or so before, and you just push the button, think about whether what you want covered is still covered. Because especially in the last year, a lot of businesses, their revenues are up or down. There are more or less employees. So we're getting the message across about just examining your demands and needs, as the insurance company call it, to make sure, one, that you're getting what you need, you're not paying for things that you don't need, and that the insurance company can't turn around to you when you make a claim and say, you did tell us that you had a machine that made fireworks, and therefore we're not going to pay. So we're using networks, we're using organizations, like-minded trade bodies, who also want to promote the sustainability of their business members around this message. And I've been invited to lots of sort of panels around this discussion. And you're right, there's a huge amount of apathy. But we've seen in the last 6 to 8 weeks, people really thinking about it, especially around New Year, because that's a traditional time where people think about their insurance.
Because again, you know, if you came to me, I didn't know you, new company, no track record, right? But what you're saying is you're gaining the authority through the relationships and organisations or membership organisations who are passing benefit to, which makes absolute sense. So again, bringing another lesson there, there's an opportunity to partner with people already in a field that you don't necessarily have a existing network.
So also, as effectively a startup, we can't go on TV with this message, and also it's a very targeted message because it's for businesses of a certain size,
Sure.
and therefore working alongside. For example, we work with the West London Business Group, which is a group of businesses of a certain size that are ideal for our product. So it's a slower
Yeah.
sell, but what we don't get is a lot of applications from people who really were never going to be able to cover anyway.
No, sure.
So
and obviously the event industry, and one thing
Yeah.
I was finding when I was at trade show business last year, so after the show finished, and
Yeah.
my show was a week before Cheltenham, obviously then talking about the future, and generally a lot of the objections that my ex-colleague is getting, and I'm doing a sales floor event next week where we're going to cover this, is, well, I'm not going to book a live event, definitely not now, because A, I don't know whether it's happening, or even if you tell me it's happening, what happens if it gets cancelled? I know you don't necessarily deal with that area, but I guess you could sort of understand the challenges of getting back to live.
Yeah,
for people wanting
absolutely.
to, right? Whether it's a show or an act or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that those are the challenges. Interesting enough, the name Rarusni, tell us where it came from.
So the premise of the business is effectively to give something back, and so the word Rarusni is the reverse spelling of the word insurer. And we just wanted to have that bit of provenance, if you like, as part of what we're doing. But I think when we look about insurance and the event business, there is such a strong link between those two industries because they both need each other. And I think we might see some more innovation in terms of how insurance companies have to provide their product around what might happen and what might not happen.
Yeah.
And I think that we've seen a few initial products where if people are driving less, so there's insurance are seeing a small refund there. I think some of the event organizers are perhaps seeing a bit of a refund. What will be interesting is when it comes to renewal.
Yes.
Because we gave you a little bit back because you haven't done anything for last year, but how do you price it? And will we see a sort of, in the same way you can buy pay as you go motor cover, that you pay by the mile or you pay by the day. I wonder if we're going to start seeing pay as you go event insurance. Rather than buying for the year, you buy it by the event and the number of people that go to the event, rather than buying a blanket policy for your whole year. I don't know, but I think there's room for that level of innovation. It's just a big ask for the insurance company to underwrite in that way. But it's certainly, we're looking at whether you can create those sort of products in the marketplace to give people the comfort that they're not having to pay a lot of money and then try and get some of it back.
I think the government also clearly have a role to play. In Germany this week, specifically again in the events industry, put a fund together. If I've got my maths correct, it was 600 million or something euros. I know that you've got some views on the FCA case around business corruption.
Yeah, I think the FCA case was interesting. I'm no expert on what happened, what was said, and I haven't read the thousands of words that were written. But I think it's going to fundamentally change the relationship between the customer, possibly the intermediary, and the insurer, where they will have to collaborate more to have a mutually beneficial relationship. What we can't see is every time there's some incident, a 6-month legal case where people's businesses are effectively shut and they're hoping they're going to get a payout. So I think we need to bring all those bodies together so that there isn't any friction when there comes to be a claim. So which is why we were touching on, when you buy it, check that you've got what you think you've got, because just because it says business interruption doesn't mean that's all business interruption. And be really careful to make sure that you've got what you need. What we have seen already, though, is a huge increase in the price of the professional indemnity and director and officers insurance, because there's been a lot of claims coming through recently, what they call the long tail of people making those claims, and quite genuine and legitimate claims. But that the size of that insurance market has reduced hugely, and there have been instances where people's renewal have been 400% or 500% on previous years. because the insurance companies are really nervous about that because they're worried about what might happen in the future. So it's
Sure.
all this uncertainty doesn't help with events. It doesn't help with anything. So the more you collaborate with those providers and tell them what you need, the less likely is that there's going to be any form of future dispute, in my opinion.
And are you targeting a specific industry? Because obviously, as a small business, I know
Yeah.
you're going through other professional organisations.
Yeah.
Are you focusing specifically on an SME as a big?
Yeah.
It's a broad church. Are you focusing on the SME, one specific specific industry? What's your focus?
So it depends on how you define SME, of course. We're kind of defining in our sense around turnover. So we're looking at businesses that have been established a couple of years and are turning over a sort of anywhere between sort of 4-7 million,
Okay.
that kind of size business. We're not at the 249 employee government level of SME, not at this stage, but it's those smaller businesses like our own that we're looking to help. So that's our own sort of size, and we're cross sector. So there's very few sectors that we aren't able to help with.
Okay, and I guess you'd also possibly go in and do a quick sort of, I'm making this up, but like a health check, if you like, of the
yeah. So it's just a matter of, I think, asking the customer the right questions and asking the customer why he thinks he needs to have that insurance. Now, insurance providers and brokers aren't allowed to advise or to suggest, but they are allowed to ask questions and make the customer think. So we have seen instances where there have been companies that don't provide advice that have been buying professional indemnity insurance and directors and officers. And when we ask them why, because we always have. So we're trying just to get people, as I said, to think about how your business has probably changed dramatically since the last time you pushed that renewal button.
And what are your hopes for the future, Paul? I mean, obviously there's this. I mean, I guess.
Oh gosh,
sorry,
it's a big question.
Well, I mean,
so,
maybe people generally, for what's your, do you have a view on? Well, we've all got a view on what's happening at the moment.
Yeah.
My view is it's funny. There was a lot of positivity with the vaccine. Clearly,
yeah.
Most like in January, it's been a bit. Come on, let's get on with it. And it's we didn't realise then we're going to be down in another 3-month lockdown. Yeah. What's your
I think a lot of us have probably stopped making too longer term projections, forecasts, or thoughts, because just as we do, we get sort of stung by them. From a business point of view, Verisni's intention is to launch a whole range of innovative products. We're working on at least 3 new products coming out this year. One for the transport industry, one around the kind of domestic residential insurance sector. Again, all these industries have bought insurance traditionally since the even if they're buying through these sort of aggregators, they're still buying their own policy. So that's where we'd like to be with Verisni, and to be doing some good, to saving people money, to helping them think about products. When it comes to Bugle, we'd love to revisit some of the campaigns and activities that we used to do. We have some thoughts that have come out of some of your conversations about, well, let's not be someone who is in the supply chain. Let's start creating our own events. In certain sectors, is there events in sectors that we know? So we're thinking about that. Obviously, very small scale, and just I think there's been a lot of collaboration around businesses in the last 9 months. And so we've had early conversations with other people that maybe want to talk to our traditional clients and see whether there's other partnership work we can do. At the moment, it's very much about, for us, trying to re-establish the work that Bugle did when the time is right. But now we're on a bit of a mission on the insurance in the insurance industry. So,
and how can people contact you, Paul, regarding?
So our insurance website's fully operational. You can apply directly, and it will generate from Monday. It'll generate an auto quote straight away. That's at rerisni.com, reirusni.com. All my contact details are on there, and there's also the Bugle profiles on there as well if anybody's thinking about brand events for later in the year. Or they can give you a call, and I'm sure you'll pass my details on, Dan.
For a cut.
Of course. A small cut.
No, and obviously they can contact you on LinkedIn as well. So
I'm on LinkedIn, also on this new Clubhouse thing, which I think is great.
yeah,
So
we
I'm
were
around
talking.
on that.
You see, yeah, we were having a chat. I think it's great.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that you need to find time also to access, right? Given everything, all the other platforms.
Yeah.
So, Paul Jeffries, thank you so much for joining
Pleasure.
us.
Absolute pleasure. Enjoyed chatting with you, Dan. I shall continue to listen and learn from your other podcasts, because I've already learned a few really interesting things in the last couple of weeks. So thank you
Great.
for that.
Hang about in the green room. I will be back.
I will.
Thank you. So thanks very much there to my guest, Paul Jeffries. Check out his insurance product and of Rerusny. So Rerusny, and you can contact him on LinkedIn or go to the website. As I said, today, 4 o'clock, I go live to Canada with Paul Center Moore. He is the Vice President of Latin America of Tarsus Group. So thanks very much for watching, guys. Check out all my clips and videos on my YouTube channel. You can just search Dan Assor, obviously on my LinkedIn page. And I look forward to welcoming you back soon.
Lightning strikes by